Newly released documents reveal that in September 2016, an investigator with Florida's Department of Children and Families visited the Cruz household after allegations of medical neglect. The investigator noted Cruz had depression, ADHD, and autism, that he cut his arms in a Snapchat post, and that he plans to go out and buy a gun. DCF closed the investigation 6 weeks later.
The local sheriff says neither Erickson nor the other suspect, who is a minor, was known by law enforcement to be a threat to this community. High school student Michael Schwartz claims that Erickson did, in the past, talk about causing a lot of harm and sadness.
I always thought he was just messing around and stuff, but sometimes he did hint at it here and there.
We all have an obligation to meet the expectations of parents, and the expectation is that when they send their kid to school in the morning, the kid's going to go home alive in the afternoon and safe. And so that's the expectations that parents should have, and we have an obligation to meet that expectation. Threat management is very different than other forms of intelligence-led policing or actionable type policing. What's very unique about threat management in Pinellas County is we actually engage in what is known as threat management as opposed to just threat assessments. You'll hear people talk about it in this arena of threat assessment, threat assessment, threat assessment. Well, you can assess it, but what really matters is what you do about it. And you can assess it and determine, yeah, there's something here, but it doesn't rise to the level of being able to make an arrest or a Baker Act. Well, then you're right back in the same situation because you're still not managing it in the long term. So we put people on threat management plans. We monitor them for a period of time depending upon the threat level and try to do the best we can to ensure that it doesn't get worse. Threat management is not predictive. Threat management doesn't use a crystal ball. Threat management is using information that indicates that there may be issues that somebody is having, and again, before it becomes actionable. Threat management teams are required in every school, but threat management teams' decision is only as good as the information they have. So most of the cops in the schools, the SROs, are not equipped to glean all that information. And one, they don't have the time, they don't have the access to the systems, and sometimes they don't have the knowledge of the systems. So we decided here in Pinellas that every time the school commences a threat assessment with their threat management team, that they're going to send the information to us, we're going to do all that work, and we're going to provide the report back so that the cop and the mental health professional and the principal and the teacher and everybody assigned to that threat management team has robust information from which to make a decision. If you have bad information or no information, you're not going to be able to make a good decision. So we started that. We rolled it out this year countywide, so it's being done for every school in the county.
20-year-old Carlos Del Cid facing murder charges for the shooting death of Monterey Park police officer Gardiel Solorio. Court records show Del Cid was on probation for burglary and domestic violence.
Investigators say nobody saw this coming. The only real blip on the radar was from June of last year when he made threats toward a high school. State police brought him in for a mental evaluation, but nothing really happened out of that.
Threat management within the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office really started as a result of school-based threat assessments. It started as a partnership between the Pinellas County School Board and the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. And with that partnership, we identified the need to have more information management or information sharing within the Pinellas County schools.
A large part of the threat management section and the process in which we currently have would also have come from the sheriff's involvement in the Majority Stoneman Douglas Commission. He's heavily involved in that. There's been numerous changes throughout the state from the legislature and such from the work that's come out of the commission.
There were a few incidents that really jumped out to us where maybe we had a risk protection order that came in and what follow-up was really occurring with that. Typically with a risk protection order, we're going and revisiting those folks in a year. A year is a long time for someone who's on the pathway to violence. We really thought through a process of how we could come to assist that individual. Not necessarily through arrest, not necessarily through any sort of punitive measures, but really how could we help that individual? Most of the individuals that we see and the individuals that we deal with, they're looking for help. They're looking for a way to get off that pathway. They acknowledge that whatever's going on in their lives or whatever turmoil or whatever trigger they have, it's not good for them. And we are here to find a way to help get them off that path through not only partnerships within the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, but also partnerships outside of the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office with the State Attorney's Office, with our Child Protection Services, and other components that we have, other agencies that we work with within the county. We're focused on we call it kind of a triangle. We are identify, assess, and manage. We have a group of analysts as well as a group of detectives who are responsible for supporting that philosophy on management of persons of concern. And it really starts with the analyst.
My job as a law enforcement analyst, primarily right now I work the squads, so I'm assigned to squads 1 and 2. I handle all the reports that come in through the deputies. I read all the reports, I summarize those reports, and I try to pick out key points that would help us build assessments on our side. A threat assessment is basically a tiered background that we do on persons of concern. My job is I'm reading through those reports and looking for keywords or phrases that might make a person of concern on the pathway to violence.
I'm assigned to threat assessments. So with that, I am given persons of concern, and I basically do a full background on them and past cases they may have been involved in, and I compile all that into an investigative assessment to give to the detective.
So back when I first started, believe it or not, there was a map on the wall and there was pins. You just basically put a pin in the wall, and that's where your burglaries were happening the night before. Back then, we were focused on finding the bad guy, putting him in jail, not finding out why they were doing certain things, why they were involved in domestic violence and things like that. It was just arrest them.
We're looking with that for persons or actions that indicate potential for violence. So suicidal ideations, ideations of harming others, direct or indirect threats of violence, fixation on mass homicide, or any sort of fixation on unhealthy items. We're going to use that, and the analyst is going to look at that information, and once they assess that, yes, that is present within this person of concern, they're then going to take that information and refer it over to a detective.
The detective will take that information, and at that point, they're really beginning their threat assessment, investigation, or their management of the person. So at that point, they're figuring out, who do I need to go talk to? Was it an incident with a neighbor? Okay, do I need to go talk with the other neighbors in the neighborhood? Do I need to go talk with that person's family members? Try and locate those person's friends. Try and figure out really what happened at the incident, but more so, what is going on with that person that led to this incident?
I think we've all shown up on these calls where we know in a couple of days we're going to be back, or we realize a person has purchased a firearm, or there's a lot of violence going on in a specific household, whether there are children involved or not. Ideally, we try to remove that person from the pathway by offering services, getting CPI involved, state attorney's office, SRO if the kids are going to school, mental health if needed as well. So our big focus is just trying to get more services. Now, if it leads to something criminal as well, we will follow up on that and act accordingly. But the biggest thing is just trying to remove that person off that pathway.
Patrol is very focused in the now. This position gives me a lot of time to kind of reflect, follow up, do a lot of more deep dive into what's going on behind the scenes and what's kind of causing a lot of these events to take place, whether it's domestic violence related, school threat related. There's a lot of moving pieces that kind of cause these events to occur, and I can kind of delve into those and possibly either change behavior or help mitigate future actions.
Our detectives are, I would say, kind of like the quarterback. they're pulling all these people together as a team and using whatever tools to assist them in their investigation to help the person.
I think it's crucial in the law enforcement world now because of everybody's inundated with tasks and assigned jobs, and so at times it's hard for your basic patrolman or a special crimes detective to be able to focus on potential threats and the potential violence in the future.
Eventually they're going to talk to that person of concern. Depending on the actions that person is doing, we're going to make an assessment and determination as to what level of concern they are. We have a low, moderate, elevated, and a critical. And then each different level of concern, there are different steps and measures associated with each one. A low level of concern might be, we'll follow up with the person every 45 to 90 days, where a critical level of concern might be somebody that we're out talking to and trying to do something with every single day. We bring in a number of partners from Child Protective Investigations, other agencies, our mental health folks, and we literally have a sit-down roundtable conversation about these folks and trying to identify different services that we can bring into them to get them off the pathway to violence.
Whatever means we need to go to vet out a threat, we're going to. Because we here don't want to be that agency on the news saying, unfortunately, we knew of something and we didn't follow through.
I'm sure you've heard see something, say something numerous times. And there's been numerous studies on prior mass attackers, and those studies have showed that they were, one way or another, telling other people around them and giving hints that they were gonna do something. And that person that had that information didn't come forward with it and kept it to themselves, and the person of concern went out and conducted a mass attack. It is a partnership with the community. We are not successful at our job with trying to get people off the pathway to violence without that partnership and help from the community members to give us that information. Arresting people is not what we're looking to do. It's not the end-all be-all. That's not what we're looking for. We're trying to figure out what the stressors are going on in that person's life, whether it's financial, family issues, mental health issues, and get them services that can help hit them and steer them in the right path to get them off that pathway essentially to violence that it may lead to one day.
Gauging a success for threat management is very difficult. You're never going to know what you prevented. You never know what someone is capable of.
Sometimes it's an intangible that you're measuring, because you can measure crime. How do you measure it when you stop crime? And sometimes that's hard, but I can tell you that I know for a fact that since we started threat management robustly here at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, it's been highly effective.